We'll get started this morning. We have Sue Hansen here, our county commissioner. And so she's going to talk about conflict management during COVID. Obviously, tensions are high right now, and that can result in some sometimes unsettling interactions amongst people. And so, as we all know, Sue is an expert in this field. And so we're really looking forward to talking to her today. So I'll flip it over to Sue. Sue, thank you.
Thank you, Kendall. So yeah, I'm a expert in conflict. That's great. I think I think that
Conflict management.
okay,
Conflict
okay,
management.
well, whatever. So I want we have a fairly reasonable crowd here this morning. So I had just asked in the chat that people put their business affiliation. I see some people I know, but not everybody. But I was asked first to chat a little bit about the vaccine rollout. Just to give you a quick update. Currently, we have gone through the hospital. Emergency responders are now, the hospital and emergency responders will be getting their second shot. And we had a clinic pilot last week where we had 80 doses left over. And so we did 80 folks that were on the waiting list. We currently have over 3,800 on the waiting list right now. So if you all, even if you're not in the 70 age range, if you want a vaccine, you can go ahead and register at the Montrose County JIC website, and you'll be selected as we roll out the priorities as stated by the state. So we have a clinic starting tomorrow in the morning. We will be focusing 100% on the 70 age folks. There you are, Kendall. And so we'll be able to give them, I think we're going to be doing 430 tomorrow. One of the challenges that we're facing here is that the state and the federal government, the distribution of the vaccines are population based, and there doesn't seem to be any clear rhyme or reason on the numbers that we get. But we requested last week 600, but we got 200. So we're always kind of recalculating the number of people that we can give vaccines to on the dependent on the number that we have available. So we have set up the vaccine clinic at the Friendship Hall. It'll be a walk-in clinic, and we have done a throughput calculation where if we have the vaccine available, we'll be able to do up to 5,000 a week. So we're just waiting and on the quantity so that we can make sure that we get as many people who want the vaccine can get the vaccine. So for the general public, it'll be the rollout will be later on probably into March, maybe sooner than that, depending on how many people want the vaccine. But it's a ever-changing target in terms of, do we have enough vaccine and how many can we vaccinate? So be patient with us. We have the plan in place. We're ready to go. We're just what our goal was to do is at least 50% of the Montrose County population, which would be approximately 25,000 vaccinations. But again, it's all dependent upon the supply chain, and the supply chain seems to have been having some problems in terms of rollout. So if anybody has any questions about the vaccine, how we're operating that, if you have any further questions, put it in the chat or just contact me directly. As always, I'm happy to chat with you about that. I've put together, Kendall asked, because of the heightened frustrations with regard to COVID and just some of the challenges that all of us are facing, we thought it might be useful to have how to deal with some of the challenging customers in your lives. And I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to cover anything that's earth-shattering to you, but it might serve as a reminder, and maybe there's some ideas that you can employ in your business that might be valid and useful. So let me go ahead and share my screen at this point. And I'm assuming everybody can see that.
Yep, we can see it, Sue.
Perfect.
Looks good.
All right, so I wanted to just remind people that it's been a long time since I've had a business with employees. I sold that business in 1998, so that's quite a while ago now. But I know that when you have employees, you really need to be clear about how you want them to communicate. But I wanted you to understand that you have the power to make sure that this that your employees can handle these customers in a way that will preserve your business. And what the last thing a business owner wants to do is have fewer customers. At least that's how I was. So I was really insistent on always making sure my employees understood, you know, what I wanted them to convey to the customer. And this, with this pandemic, it has just caused such a new level of aggravation that I think it just bears some discussion. And I'd like to hear from you all too. I have some time at the end for questions, but if you have any suggestions or some things that have worked for you, that would be awesome to hear. As a county commissioner and as a mayor, I feel fairly sure, certain, including Mayor Bynum in this, is that we know how it is to get yelled at, and we interact with customers or residents all the time. And so we know that how, when people don't agree with decisions that we make, that we get customers that are, or I say customers, residents that are all too willing to share their opinions. And lots of those sharing of opinions are pretty voracious and loud, and sometimes very disconcerting. So, you know, I thought it might be useful for you to understand that we know that people are angry, and I've seen just witnessed it myself in terms of me running around the businesses and giving out masks and all of that, I've witnessed customers being really over the top in terms of being, you know, inappropriate. So I think it's important for us to review some of the things that we could do. So the resistance is clear. It's clear and present. We have lots of people that are upset. I'm guessing a large percentage of people that are coming into your establishments. They're wearing masks. They're compliant. They're fine with it. And then you have those that are just resistant. So we want to make sure that we can deal with all of those customers in a way that promotes business and preserves our dignity. So I think about, you know, my dream customer, and these are the people that come in, and I don't know if you could say they're few and far between, but these are the ones that say, thank you for doing this. I appreciate you all wearing your masks. You're awesome. We really appreciate you. The problem is that what we sort of forget about the dream customers, because what we have in Montrose, at least right now, is we have these COVID restrictions, which have really redefined rude behavior. And I think we've taken it to a level that that has been, in many cases, very disturbing, that people would get that upset about a mask, a suggestion to wear a mask. Because, you know, in Montrose County, we've never mandated it. We have never policed it. We have never taken a hard line about it at all. And there are some businesses in our community that still choose not to participate. The interesting thing is that, you know, our numbers in terms of spread of COVID are not any different from a county like San Miguel, who might have a more strict mandate. So it is interesting to see the numbers and the data. And I was just reading an article this morning about New York City, who had a very strict mask mandate and shutdowns and all of that. And then comparing it to Florida, who did not do that, the percentage of spread is actually is less severe in Florida than it was in New York. So while that may not be apples to apples comparison, it does give you some indication that, you know, there's hardly any rhyme or reason to how we really control this spread. And so most of us are tasked with doing the best that we can. And again, the customers are the ones that feel the brunt of it, because we're asking them to wear masks when they come into your store. So I just want to review that, you know, many of us have our inside voice, and this is what you really want to say, but it doesn't do us any good to verbalize how we feel about COVID, how we feel about masks personally, especially if it's going to take a customer that's mildly irritated to someone who's really over the top irritated. So I just want you to caution you and your employees to make sure that, you know, we don't make this a political issue. We don't make it take a stand on these kinds of issues. All we want to do is interact in that moment to make sure that people will still come into your store and your business, still interact in a way, and still purchase things. So that would be one of my tenets of advice, is to keep your inside voice inside and modify your outside voice. So a couple of the problems that I've sort of identified with regard to masks is that and some of the roadblocks that we see are that, you know, I have found that I can't even understand people a lot of times. So the muffled speech, because of the mask, it causes us to have a more difficult interaction. You know, the masks trigger emotion. I mean, as soon as somebody sees a mask, it's very, it's obvious that you have a mask on, or that you're having someone stand at your place of business to require masks. So that all triggers the emotion. And when we take a customer um, that is already loaded for bear, that just puts them over the top. Sometimes when you're wearing a mask, you can't, unless somebody's really expressive with their eyes, you can't tell if they're smiling, growling. We take away the nonverbal cues of communication, which is our facial expression. That's where we convey, are we happy? Are we sad? Are we aggravated? Are we disappointed? Are we surprised? And so when we take that away, we take away a huge toolbox in terms of communicating. So that's why the words and what you say become so much more important. People are, as soon as they see a mask, it triggers. We have difficulty hearing people with masks. I myself had an interaction at the library, and honestly, I could not hear the woman. I must have asked her 6 times. And finally, she started yelling at me, not in a mean way, but so I could hear. Well, all of those complexities add a level to our communicating that we didn't really have before we had COVID. I think that we'll end up being much better communicators after all of this. Hopefully we learn something from this, but it makes it difficult to communicate. So I want you to recognize that first with masks and asking people to do things they never thought they'd ever have to do in America, it just changes the landscape in terms of customer service. So we have to be really heightened and even more diligent about how we communicate with people. So here are a few of my solutions. I think that, I believe we have to start at least with a level of empathy. We know that people are aggravated. When I interact with people, I know there's an unpredictable nature to, is this a person that is pro-mask? Is this a person that is aggravated that they have to wear a mask? So what am I assessing at the point? So I think starting with empathy at first, at least having that and conveying that to your staff. We don't know if the person that's walking into your place of establishment just had a loved one die, or someone was just tested positive. They're nervous. They don't understand a lot of it, even though there's lots of information about it. We still have questions about what COVID means and what it's going to do to people long term. And so there's a lot of unknowns. So that empathy can go a long way, at least by giving people a break. I think agreeing with them is always a good tactic, aligning with their perspective. So if they come in and make a comment that's negative, you can say, this has been awful for all of us. I agree with you. This is awful. It's terrible. But you also have to conduct a business, and you have to come out of this whole. So I recommend avoiding any arguing. And I've seen store owners actually arguing with people, because frankly, even owners and employees are stretched to a very thin level too, in terms of their patience and their tolerance, because if you've had 6 people walk in and they're all criticizing, it's really hard to get through that. We don't train our employees for that level of aggravation. So the arguing, it does not work. So I think that if someone comes in, they say something snarky, you just don't take the bait and ignore that comment and move on. I think saying things like, this is my business, I have to stay afloat. I'm sorry that you have to do this. I hate it too. And I think aligning with your customer in that sense really goes a long way. Now, of course, you have people that are thanking you for wearing, those dream customers that are thanking you for wearing the mask. They're thanking you for keeping them safe. So again, it's just a balance between making sure that we are conveying accurate information to the customer and also being empathic. So I like to recommend going the extra mile. In fact, I have a stack full of $5 gift cards to start distributing to businesses. I think that if someone is particularly upset, there's nothing that makes them feel worse than saying, well, you know what, I'm sorry you're having such a bad time of this. I am too, but here's a cup of coffee on me. And so we're going to start distributing those to the businesses. If you'd like to have some of those, please just indicate that in the chat, and I'll make sure I get those to you first. So I think that, giving somebody what I have found when I deal with difficult people is that if you let them vent and you're just really measured and reasonable in your response, pretty soon they start feeling bad because they're screaming and yelling at you. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're going to walk out. So, you know, you have to sort of forget that person and go on with your day. I think having some scripts ready for employees, for me personally, before I have a heated conversation with someone, a critical conversation with someone, I always script out what I want to say. I think it's always helpful to have some words in your head before you get hit by somebody in a surprise attack. And I have some suggestions here in a minute. So scripts are important, and I think something I have found in my, I've been around the block a few times, and I've had some people attack me, and I've had to really pull together and try to figure out how I'm going to respond to someone. I have found that when you say, you know, you might be right, they're confused. It confuses them, because if someone's yelling and screaming about the COVID and they're the experts in COVID and this isn't going to spread and masks don't work, you can say, you know what, you might absolutely be right. But this is something I have to do according to law, according to my business. You might be regulated by a liquor board. You can't have some. There's no wiggle room for you if the liquor board agent was in your place of business at that moment. So I think that letting people vent, giving them an opportunity to get their aggravation out, and watching you handle it in a measured response, measured way without any emotion really helps diffuse the situation. So you might be right that's one of my key phrases, because you can visibly just see them back down immediately. Obviously, controlling your voice, don't escalate, don't get aggravated. Again, this takes a lot of energy to do this, and we've been almost a year through this whole COVID thing now. Hopefully, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel as more people get vaccinated. We'll have less and less chance of spread. So that would be a really good thing to get back to normal. So, and resist your judgmental thoughts. You may have a political perspective. You may have a perspective about masks. You might be an expert in COVID, but that's not necessarily the time to argue with someone and come at them with judgment. Here's a couple of things I think might be useful is just to use as a script. I never thought I'd have to tell a customer that they couldn't enter without a mask. This is unprecedented. I'm sorry. Hopefully this will be over soon. And again, for some of you who are not necessarily used to being apologetic, and maybe you feel like this doesn't fit with your personality, trust me, it'll go a long way to helping that customer be a little bit calmer. I'm just trying to stay afloat. I mentioned that earlier. I think if you, one of the things that I've been telling people is if you want that business to be around next year and later in this year, then do what they ask you to do, because I don't want to lose any more business, nor does Mayor Bynum and the City Council want to lose any more businesses than we have to. I think if you're regulated by DORA or a liquor control board, tell them that, explain to them, you know, I don't necessarily have a choice, and this is my livelihood. I've put my life savings in my business, and you know, I'm sorry if you can't stay here. I regret that, but this is what we have to do here. And then, you know, no kidding, this is the worst year of my business life. I have found that even with people that are aggravated at the county, if I align with their viewpoints, yeah, it doesn't mean I agree with them, but I'm aligning with them, I understand them, and saying those words really helps diffuse a situation that's getting out of control. And finally, I want you to remember that this is a Sueism. Only 2% of the population, and I think that Martin probably has heard me say this before, 2% of the population is genetically miserable. It doesn't matter what you do. They're still going to be grouchy. They're still going to be mean. They were mean before we had COVID. They're going to be mean well after COVID. But what's important about that is that's a small fraction of the people in Montrose County. And if I did my percentages right, that might be 880 people that are genetically miserable. Hopefully those are not people that are coming into your store. And the rest of our Montrose County population are pretty understanding, and they're pretty great people. We live in a generous community, and for the most part, if we can meet them where they are, I think we have a better chance of diffusing any situation that might get out of hand. This is going to get back to normal. I'm predicting April is going to be a normal getting, you know, by that time, hopefully if vaccine supplies last, we'll have a large part of the population vaccinated. We'll probably be seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm predicting April. Don't hold me to that, but that's my viewpoint. I think that as we get supplies. And as the county is able to disseminate, once we get a bulk of the population vaccinated, people can go to their own physicians and get vaccinated there. We'll roll it out community-wide at some point in the future. There's no plan to do that currently, but that will happen at some point. And then we'll get back to normal. So I'm going to open it up to questions and comments. Does anybody have any questions or comments about my presentation?
So Sue, I'm looking at our attendee list. I'm looking for anyone who's going to raise their hand and I can unmute them. And
thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, that's you and I are the co-hosts of this meeting. Unfortunately, we can't elevate either Kendall or Greg Story to be co-host. I'm not sure why, but I'm looking at the attendee list. I see one hand, Susan Barrientos. I'm going to allow her to talk and ask her question.
Perfect. Hey, Susan.
Good morning. So lots of good tips. I just wanted to say my opinion is when my girls are stretched thin, then we work on some self-care stuff. And that's kind of our goal for this year is to work on the employee self-care.
So what are you doing for that?
We're just going to start. I've been online doing some research just to give them, my first one's going to start with 15 ways that some for your soul, some for your mind, some for your body. Take a walk, meditate, make a gratitude list, just those kinds of things. So we're just going to, I think, work on that. And the better my coworkers feel, I think the better we're able to deal with cranky Shirley that walks in the door every day.
Right. Yeah, and again, when we're looking at the elderly, what we have found at least people that are calling in, we're getting about 350 calls a day for either registering or just griping, and the elderly are scared and they don't understand it. Many of them don't have access to the information that we have access to, so they're confused. And so again, and I'm not minimizing the stress that causes to an employee. It really can put your mind in a place where it's not necessarily good. I find that humor works for me. And sometimes I think that people may think I don't take my job seriously because I use humor, but I think it's important to be able to use humor as a tool that when you get people laughing, it relieves stress. And that's not the only answer, obviously, but it's one of the answers and one of the tools that I use. So don't forget humor in that either.
Sue, we've got a couple more questions. We've got one that was posted, I'll read, and that was, how do you deal with customers that request refunds because other customers are not following the rules that they want followed? There seems to be those that expect others to be solely responsible for their safety, taking no personal responsibility.
Well, I wouldn't be giving anybody any refunds. I think that your signage is important. And I think that, if you, first of all, when we think about masks and you think about your location or your business, if you're able to social distance at least the 6 feet apart, the masks are not as necessary if you can maintain that kind of distance. So, perhaps you can use a number of the tools that we use with regard to containing the spread of COVID that might be useful. So if somebody came into my business and they refuse to wear a mask, I might say, well, that's your choice, that's your right. And I'm not going to fight you on that, but I'm going to ask you to stay, 6 feet away from any other customers, and I'm going to be just kind of keeping an eye on you. Would that be okay? I don't think that I would get bought into any kind of refunds, and I think that's inappropriate to even ask for that. So I think that's a pretty gutsy thing for a customer to do.
Okay, Sue, with 4 minutes left, I've unmuted Martin Lutz, and he has a question to ask.
Hey, Martin.
Hey, Sue. Hey, just a quick statement that seems to have worked for us that people can consider too is, what are your options for delivery of service? We've had an occasional patient that's in that 2% that comes in and says, I'm not doing it, not going to happen, and you have to see me. And my personal feeling is, no, we don't have to see them, but we want to see them. We want to take care of people. So with what we do, we have the option for telehealth that we can offer them and kind of make things work. Bottom line is, I think most people understand when we when we're giving them options, and it's hard to refuse care
Yeah.
with therapy, but it gives us something to kind of give them a little bit of hope, I guess.
You know, it's really important, and I'm guessing you do a lot of this, Martin, is that it's really important for a leader or a business owner to really communicate and to stay in touch with your staff. And, you know, some of us are voracious communicators and some of us aren't, and you probably know who you are. But if you tend not to be a communicator, I want you to understand that people operate better with more information. So the more, even signage, even having a COVID information sheet if for clients that, or for customers or clients that come in, the more information we have, the better we can diffuse those situations. So especially with your employees, they should know the basic tenets of the COVID situation and what spreads. And if you have any or need any information, contact me. I'd be happy to give you a cheat sheet so that you could, your employees would be able to respond to those folks.
Great, thanks. We've got just 2 minutes left, Sue, and I don't see any other hands. So perhaps now is a great time to wrap it up. You've provided your contact information right there.
Yep.
The city is also here to help businesses be successful during these times. And if anyone has any suggestions on future business update webinars, Kendall Kramer is the guy, and his email has been provided in the chat, and he's pretty easy to find at the City of Montrose. So let him know if you've got other good ideas for Wednesday morning updates.
So Mayor, I see Councilman Frank has his hand up.
Okay, let's allow him to say something.
You hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
I just wanted to really support the idea that we have to remember that our employees are also stressed, not just from the COVID environment, but they're also stressed because their work environment is threatened. So anything, and I really support the idea of self-care for those employees. And it's, I think, really beneficial for employers to take that extra time. And like Sue mentioned, say thank you. Say, hey, good job.
Mm-hmm.
Little touches are going to make a big difference.
Well, those, you know, again, making sure that you're aware of the employees that are, you know, like for me, I mean, I have really thick skin. And so for me, I'm not as concerned about someone yelling at me, but you have employees that have different styles. And so be tuned in to who is really bothered by that. And I think that was a good point, Dave, just to make sure that you're keying into their level of stress so that they're not, because if someone's stressed on your staff, then their interactions with the customers are going to be that much more tense, and they're going to be ready and loaded for bear. So, you know, even if you as an employer have to be more lenient with hours or flex time or whatever you can do within your realm to get the work done, but also to be responsive would be very useful in terms of dealing with this. So remember, if you guys want some coffee cards or whatever, let me know. I don't see anything in the chat, but maybe we can copy. Kendall, you can copy the chat, right?
Yeah, we have a few folks that have asked for cards, so
Okay.
I'll send you that list.
Okay, perfect. And I want to just underscore the partnership that we have with the city. Really glad that we're all working toward whatever we can do to support the businesses. And I think that Montrose business community has really weathered this storm well. We've done some, I mean, I'll call out Kimberly with Shishi Boutique. I mean, she has been able to use some flexible ways of getting people to still spend money in her store. I think it's really great to be able to do that. So there are some, we've learned to adapt and overcome, and we will look forward to April and beyond, and hopefully we'll be able to, you can mark my words and then you can call me if I'm wrong, but I'd like to see a change in the climate by then. So anyway, It's been a pleasure to talk to you guys. I hope that some of these tips help. Again, nothing you didn't know before, but maybe serving as a reminder. So good luck with your businesses, and I'll see you on the road.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us. And we'll make sure that we get those gift cards out to everyone who requested one.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, take care.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you, Barbara.